Have you always wanted to create a game but didn't know where to start? Well, you're in the right spot. Today I'm going to be walking you through creating this game here. It's a little collection game where you run around and collect oranges and your points slowly go up. And if you grab each orange in a round, you get a nice little perfect pop-up. This game will be completely free to do. I will be taking you through every step, so after this video, you will know how to make this game, and you can use these concepts to continue building on it on your own. So without further ado, we're going to hop on in. Over here on our browser, we're going to go to construct.net, and that'll take you to this screen. And as you can see, I'm not even logged into an account, and it's not required. We're going to hit try now and launch the guided tour. And no thank you, not now, and I'll be your guide today. And we're just going to start a new project up here on the top left. We can name it whatever we like. We start off with this nice blank page. We have some properties on the left side that tells us about it. One of the important ones is our viewport size. That's the screen we're going to be working with, and you can see that with the dotted lines here. That's going to be 854 pixels wide, 480 up and down. And we'll use that a little bit, so I just wanted to point it out real quick. Otherwise, we can interact with our stage by double-clicking, and it pulls up a bunch of objects we can use. And we can also select objects and events that we have on our right side here under project, which is mostly empty right now because we haven't started. So we're going to start off with making ground for our character to run on, and I'm going to show you how to make it repeat in an endless loop and give you the feel of moving forward. So we're going to double click here, and we can either scroll around and look, or we can just type in here. We're going to add a sprite. And this is just going to be any image we want to work with. And once you click it, it'll pull up the animation box. And you can draw in here kind of like paint. But we are going to work with free art packages from online. So our first one is going to be from Anzimuse. And it is a Magic Cliffs environment package. And you can just click here to download it. I already have it downloaded. And this is what it looks like after I downloaded it. So essentially there's a foreground, a zoomed in background, and a far background. We're just going to work with one today, keep it simple. We're going to grab just this picture. Back at our construct view, we're just going to drag it onto the screen here. So Alt-tabbing so we can see them both. And I'm just going to pull it up here till it says copy and release it. And then you can see that the picture is inside our little box here. And if you hold control and use your mouse wheel out or in, you can zoom out and in. You can also use your mouse wheel to go up and down, or holding shift and using your mouse wheel will go left and right. And you also have these bars here, or our zoom ins up top. But essentially we're going to want to zoom in and line up with the tree, because we're going to remove the tree here. So we're zoomed in so we can erase these pixels one by one, and we're just going to go and make sure we're on size 1 up here with our drawing tool. And we have green selected, but we also have clear or eraser selected, so we're going to right click here, and that'll actually erase these marks. And we just want to get the low ones that are next to the grass. So real quick, we're just going to erase all these out. And once you get above the grass level, we can go ahead and zoom out and use this large selector, and then make sure you grab the last few. So now we just have the grass. And one more time, I'm going to zoom in here, make sure it's all the way at the bottom. It is. We're good. And then we can use this to crop out all the extra transparent. And if you click on it, it's going to cut it out, but it will leave you with a 1 pixel gap. So when you click on it, hold down control, and that'll do it with no gap. And there we go. We have this grass background here, and we're going to make it larger, and essentially we're going to make it fill up the whole page. And like I showed you earlier, we have 854 pixels wide. So we're going to use this stretch button up top here. And I simply just double clicked on this. That's how you reopen any pixels you already have. Use this resize image, and we just said 854 was our pixel width. So I'm just going to type in 854 and then make sure I had keep aspect ratio checked, and that'll mean the height moves up at the same percentage that our width moved up. And then image stretch, that way it actually makes the image larger, not just the transparent box around the image. We'll hit OK, we see it gets bigger. We can hop out there, and now it fits on our screen pretty nicely, and we're not too worried about lining it up yet because we're going to move it. So double click on there again, and now we're going to mess with image points. And essentially the origin generally starts in the middle. Since we've cropped and moved this around a bunch, it's outside of our picture, and we want to zoom in. We want it to be on our left edge right in the center, or on the left edge either on the bottom or top. So the left edge is going to be 0, and then if we look back in here, we got 120, so we can either put this at 0, 60, or 120. We're going to go with 60, and it's just going to be right in the center there. And that's just going to be the location at which this sprite exists. So if you look over here on the left side, it's saying we're on 433 by 227. That is on the map where this origin now is. So if we want this to be in the bottom left, we'll bring this to 0. And what's our overall height? So 0, 420. And I got that by just erasing the 60 that I knew this was from 480. And that just moved it up 60 pixels from the bottom, and the 0 since it's on 0. And of course, if you don't know it, you can always just drag it around until you get it close, and then you can move it pixel by hitting the arrow keys until you line it up. And you can use the same hotkeys, so control in your mouse to zoom in, and you can make sure you have it exactly where you want it that way as well. So now we have a floor, and we're going to give this floor the behavior of bullet so it can move. We're just going to click on the left side here, add behaviors, and start typing in the word bullet, and it will come up. And it starts out with some preset properties. So if you click play now, which is up here, it's going to start your game. And as you saw, our animation just ran off to the side. I'm going to enlarge that so it's easier to see from here on. So we want to do two things here. We are going to turn off set angle, and that's just going to make it so when it changes directions, it doesn't flip the image around. And then we're going to go to our event sheet, and we're going to make our first event. So if you click on add event, double click on system, we are going to go to on start of layout. So I'm going to just start typing in. So on start of layout, and this is going to run only when you first start up your game, because it will load your layout, and this will only run on the start of the layout. So we want this to run one time, and we're going to set the sprite. So under add action, we're going to set the sprite, and we want to set the angle of motion 180 degrees. Now how this works, the left side is the condition, the right side is the event. So anytime the left side happens, the right side is going to happen. And then on the right side, I said set my sprite, which is a gross name, that's ground. So we're going to set my ground to the angle of 180 degrees of where it started. And if you remember last time, it ran off to the right, now it's going to the left. And we're going to have our character running across the screen to the right, so we want the ground moving left. So that is why we set that up. And we only need to set the angle of motion one time, so we did it on start of layout. And hopping back in our layout, we will throw on our character animation, just so it's a little easier to tell what's happening. So double click, start typing in the word sprite, and click anywhere on the map to pull it up. And this one's going to come from Pixel Frog, and they're under itch.io as well. And I'll put a link to both these specifically, but you can go onto itch.io and find all sorts of free animations. That just makes things easier for you to build your first projects, and even your later projects to save some time. And then of course you scroll down the bottom, download it, and it'll look something like this. Main characters, and we're using Mask Dude, and these are pre-animated sprite sheets, so we're going to use these again by dragging and dropping. And we want the run animation because our character is going to be running, so I'm going to click and drag it on here, and if I just drag it here, it's going to copy the image like my first one did, so we don't want that. When we drag it, we're going to make sure to drag it down onto the animation frame. So we drag it all the way down, and you'll get this import mode, and we want to go from sprite strip. And then we say how many horizontal cells and vertical cells there were. And if you look at this, it's just one line of 12 images. So we have 12 horizontal images on one vertical line. And we'll hit import, and that's going to break it up automatically for us. And if I click through these, you can see my little guy is starting to run. And I say little guy because he's super small. So we're going to make this image larger. And to keep the same exact look, we're just going to work in doubles. So we want to turn one image or one pixel into 2 by 2. So we'll double that. And then he's still too small, so we're going to do that one more time. We're going to set it to 128. And again, we had to keep aspect ratio and stretch on, and that's going to grow them quite large. And we can hop back in here. We're going to want to name this animation loop so we know what one we're working with for when we add more. And then as of right now, he's going to be kind of slow. We want him moving a little faster, so I'm going to bring that up to 15. And then when you hit play, he stops after about a second, so we're going to loop this, and that's just going to keep it going. There you go. So we have this lovely image of a guy running, and if we hit play now, something weird's going to happen. He just floats. So we are going to add the platformer behavior. So single click once just to have him selected, and under behaviors, we're going to add platform. And this will give some preset notions like Mario type game, platformer games, where your character can move around. Jump, double jump is pre-built in, and all of the properties are going to be here on the left side again. And for now, we are going to leave those as is. And now, he falls through the world because there's nothing for him to land on. There's no platform. So now we need to give him something solid to fall on. And we're just going to add a new sprite. And click anywhere. And we want this to be the width of the screen, so 854. And then the height can be nice and skinny, so we're just going to do 5 pixels for the height. We had to uncheck aspect ratio here to make sure that it didn't affect the width when we changed the height. We'll hit OK, and now we have this long thin line. And I'm just going to fill it in with a color so we know where it is. And hit OK, and we're going to drag this so that when our character walks on this, this will be our platform, and it should hold him at a spot where it looks like he's walking nicely on this flat part of the background there. Oops. And then we will select this and add the behavior of solid so our character can interact with it. And if we hit play now, our character will oddly stay on it, but it doesn't look right. So we're going to hop into our character, and this is messed up from the collision polygon. And as you can see, there's a bunch of points here. We're just going to bring it down to 4 so it's nice and simple to work with. And we just want it to, not perfectly, but pretty closely block in our character. So just a nice square around him. So we're going to set this one to 36 and get rid of these decimals. That way it's easier to match up. This is going to be 104. And essentially the top left one we want to match the Y with the top right one, and we want to match the X with the bottom left one. So This one matches this 9, and then we want to match this 36 here. And then we're going to match this 104 here. And then these two Y's have to match. So we'll put those both at 113. Oh, how did he move? Alright, so we got a perfect square. If we look at our other images, these are all the same as the first one started pretty much, and we don't want that, so we're going to right click this square. We're going to add this to the whole animation. So now when we go through, we can see our guy is surrounded by this box that we made, and that is what will collide with the solid and tell it where to stop. So we can hit play again, and we see our guy runs around down there. I'm going to move this up just a few more pixels, make it look a little better, and then I am going to scroll down to the properties and set this not to be initially visible. And that's just going to make it so we don't see it, but it's still there. So we got a guy running, and now our problem is the ground runs out. So we're going to make this into an infinite loop, and to do that we're going to be using two of the same image, and we will right click this and we want to clone it. So if you copy it, it's the exact same instance. If you clone it, it's a new instance with all of the same properties. So if I clone it, you can see here it looks the exact same. We have our origin point here on the left side. It already has this bullet for us. And essentially, if I zoom in here and set it up nice and close and hit run, nothing happens because it is called ground 2. So I'm going to Control C, Control V, and that's just going to copy the one I already have. And double click this and go back. And I'm just going to change ground 2 and hit next, done. And that's just going to essentially have copied what I already had here, but for ground 2 as well. So now when I start, the ground continues to go, so it lasts a lot longer. Our character is behind the second one, because they are done in layers, and as they're put down, the layers stack on top of each other. We will fix that once we make this an unlimited travel. And now as these move across, we're going to want to capture the one that leaves our map, which would be this one, once it leaves the map, and just reset it right here. And then as they move across again, this one will leave the map, and we want to set it right here. So that is our goal, and I'm going to Control Z a few times. That way they're just relined up back to the bottom. And we can do this by checking the X coordinate of our ground. So double click on ground, since that's the one we're working with, and we will compare X. And I just typed X in here, and that'll give us the compare. And we want if it is less than or equal to. Now if you just did equal to, depending on how quickly it moved, you might actually miss it, because it'll be moving by decimals at a time, and it would have to hit exactly the number that you put in here. So you always want to work with greater than or equal to, or less than and equal to. That way you make sure you catch it if you miss it by a few fractions of a decimal. And we're going to go with 854 if I recall. And we'll double check. Yep, 854. So, and then we'll set that to negative. So if our origin of ground, which is this one is ground 2. If our origin of ground makes it to negative 854, which is exactly one screen size to the left, that means it will no longer be on view, and that's when we're going to set it. So our condition is the X meets negative 854, and then we want to set the event. So we're going to move ground, and we're going to set the X, and this will just set a new X position for our ground sprite, and we want that to be roughly at 854, which will be on the right side. So that'll set it right at the edge of our thing, and it'll continue bulleting along. And I am going to select this whole event by clicking on the left side here, Control C, Control V, And I'm going to set these both to ground 2. That way they also have the same condition and event. So I have to do both of these and set them both to ground 2. So now if ground or ground 2 make it to negative 854, we're going to set ground and ground 2 respectively to the x position of 854. And we can also do this with set position with x at 854 and y at 0. And we can take this one step farther and set y to ground 2 dot y. And this just means don't move this off of its own position, but set the x to 854. So these will both do the exact same thing, just in different ways. And now if we run it, we can see that it's lapping because we're no longer covered up, which means we're hitting the other one, but we do have this slight pixel gap. So to fix that, we're going to be a little more specific than 854. We are going to set it to the right edge of the other one. So if we're moving ground, we want to set it to this right edge here of ground 2. And if we're moving ground 2, we want to set it to the right edge of ground 1. So instead of set x to 854, since this is for ground, we're going to do set x to ground 2 dot b box right. And that's just the sprite's right edge. And we can go ahead and do this for the other one as well. And again, we don't want to change the y here. We're just going to change the x. And this will be to ground dot b box right. Since we're moving ground 2 here, we want it to go to grounds. And we'll go ahead and run that again. And now as we switch between them, there's no gap between the two. So it's a seamless transition, other than the fact that we end up behind these bushes, which we'll fix here, as well as I'm going to set this to Z order bottom as well. That way we don't see it anymore and don't accidentally click on it when we're trying to click the grass, because that one's all done. So we have that, and if we right click, we get this little menu here, and Z order is going to be the stacking order, and we're just going to move our character to the top, and that's going to get rid of the grass covering our character. And as you can see, it just loops on through, and then you can use your keyboard keys to move around. Full jump, down does nothing, left, right. Careful, you can run off the edge because we did not set up any boundaries, and if you run off the edge, you fall forever. So next we will add a little background. So we're going to hop up one layer in Pixel Frogs 2 times and open the background folder, and we're just going to grab a random background, and we want this to be a tiled background. So I'm going to open up a tiled background and then just drag one of these in here, and we just want it to copy in, and this one claps around our image automatically, so there's no white space in between. And a tiled background, as you drag it, instead of changing the size of the image here, it's continue the pattern. So you can just stretch it out and cover it with the same background over and over again. And we're going to do the same Z order thing, but set this to the bottom. That way it's behind everything. So now we have a forever running guy that we can control with a nice little background. And it's time to add some ways to interact. So the first thing we're going to do is rename some of these guys. So we have our player and solid floor and tile background. So first thing we're going to do is add a item to collect, and again we're going to use Pixel Frogs. We'll hop up one layer and items and fruits, and we're going to use oranges. So we're going to double click here and add a new sprite. And again, we're going to want to drag and drop the oranges onto the animation frame on the bottom. And it's a sprite strip. And the pre-guess is correct. It's 17 by 1. And that breaks us into this interesting little orange image. I'm just going to name this idle, because this is what it'll be doing until we collect it. And we want to make sure that's looped. And then I am also going to grab this collected, and we're going to add a new animation and drag this into the new animations frame. Import from sprite strip, and if we click through this, we just see this cool little bubble pop, and that'll be what happens when we collide with it before it's destroyed. So we're going to name this collected, and we'll set this so it's faster, and we do not want this one to repeat. We just want to have an orange, and then when we hit it, have it pop. And close out of this, and then we're going to want this to be larger. So let's check out size 64 and make sure we reset that aspect ratio. And as long as we didn't click off the first one, clicking the checkbox is automatically going to set it. And then we have stretch. And there we go. We have a larger orange now. And we can drag this on here, and it should start auto playing with the animation. And we can run up and jump through it and nothing happens, but it is there. So for our interaction, we're going to work with a condition on our player, because we want it to be when our player collides with our orange. So we'll double click player here, and we're looking for on collision. When our player collides with our orange, let's choose our orange, and then we can verify we got it right. Player on collision with orange sprite. And what do we want to do? We essentially want to destroy the orange, give ourselves some points, play the cool little animation. So at first, let's just destroy. So select the orange, type in destroy, and then we can't collect points yet because we don't have a variable to hold them. So we can go ahead and make that now. And I click this add button down here, global variable, and we're just going to name it points. And we're going to keep the type as number, and we're going to start it out as 0 because that's generally how points start. And if you're not sure what variables are, they're just a number holder that is changeable throughout the game. So as we collect these, we will destroy the orange sprite and then add points. And we're going to go to system, which is how we work with our globals, and we're going to add to our global. So anytime we hit an orange, we'll destroy it and gain 5 points. So now we can walk over here, collect the orange. We can't tell because we don't have anything that shows our points, but it's destroyed, so that part worked, and hopefully our points were added, and we can verify they were by adding a text object here. And we want just the general text, we don't want the input one. So we'll double click that one, paste it somewhere, and we got this boring text up here. So we're going to change some of the output properties here. First, we don't want Arial font. We'll do fantasy, and we'll make this size 32 so it's nice and large, and we'll make it some sort of dark green. That way it seems happier, but it's also visible, so you want it dark enough so it's not painful for people to try to look at. And then this box will change your text, and we can preset in 0 here. And then inside of our event sheet, anytime we change the amount of points we have, we want to reset that text. So I'm going to rename this text real quick to txt score. That way I remember it is a text box and that it's working with the score. And we'll set this to orange while I'm in here. And we got everything named again. So in here we're going to work with our text score, and we want to set the text, and we want it to match the style, the format that we already had. So score, colon, and a space. And this is going to give us just the word score with colon, and these quotes are so we know we're not typing in code. We want the text to show up exactly as we have it typed. And then we want it to add the number 5, because that's how many points we'll have after collecting it. And that's going to come from our global points, that it selects points for us when we start to type it. That's our global score. And it's mad because we have 2 different types. We have our actual variable here, and we have our exact phrase we want to do. So to combine those, we just put an and. So it'll be this score and it'll add on the points. So now as we run over to our orange and collect it, our score goes from 0 to 5, which is awesome, but then the game ends because we have nothing else to do. And the last thing to fix on this is we want the oranges to pop when they are destroyed. So we are going to, instead of destroying this, set the animation. If you remember, we named our animation collected, but if you don't remember and you just start typing in the name, which all of them start with quotation marks, it'll give you all the options of names that it knows. So we had it as collected, and we want it to play from the beginning. If we destroy this here, like we had it, even if we put it at the bottom, it's going to be destroyed before we even see this animation happen. So run over here, and you can't tell the animation happened, so we need to find a new way to destroy this. You want the animation to play collected, and once it's done, you want it to go away forever. So we're going to make a new event that does exactly that. The condition will be on animation finished playing. So if it finishes playing collected, then we'll destroy it. So now we'll run over, it'll play it, and once it finishes, it destroys. And you do want to make sure it's destroyed, because even if you hide the image after you destroy it, even if you made a blank cell here, so it played the whole image and then wasn't there anymore, it would still keep memory for this object on your game. And once you've collected hundreds or thousands of these, you'd have 100 or thousands of blank images around your game, hogging memory and slowing things down. So you do want to make sure you clean up after yourself, and we do that just simply by making sure we destroy things. Now we have a way to collect oranges, and we need to make a system that automatically funnels out oranges for us. So under system, we're going to do a timed event, and just type in ever for every X seconds, and we're just going to set it to 3. So every 3 seconds, we'll have an event that spits out some oranges for us. And this event is going to have multiple options. So if we right click on this, we can go to add blank sub event, and we'll do this 3 times because we plan on having 3 different options. So every 3 seconds, we want one of these 3 things to happen. And the first one will be to create an orange. So system create object, and you can select orange as the object to create, and then you can put where you want it to be created. And we have our oranges starting off screen and then coming over with your character's movement. So we want to make sure our X is larger than 854, that way it's off screen. And our Y we want somewhere in the middle of the map. And on the bottom right here, it'll show you where your mouse cursor currently is. So you can drag down and see about where you want your oranges to be. So we can have them as low as like 350 and as high as 100. That'll put them in this area right here. So how do we get a range of spots for it to spawn? We'll use random, and that'll randomly pick a number for us between those. We said 100 and 350. So 350 minus 100 is going to give you 250. So we want to randomly choose between that 250 gap and random, and then we're just going to put that 250 in the middle. And this is going to give us a number including decimals between 0 and just under 250. It doesn't technically reach 250, but we're not too worried about that 0.0 fraction. We wanted that to start at 100 and move up to 350. So we're going to just say plus 100. So now it'll be this random number of up to 250 plus 100, which allows us to get up to 350, but not below this 100 right here. And as of now, there's no extra conditions here, which means every 3 seconds it'll come in, it'll play this, this, and this, which is fine right now since this is the only one that has something in it. And we can play it to verify that an orange comes through, but I messed up here. I put this on the x-axis instead of the y-axis, so we're going to Control X to cut that, and we're going to paste it on the bottom, and then the X had to be 900, so it was off the edge, 900 or greater. That way it starts off the edge. And then that'll have them spawn over here, and our oranges don't move yet, so we need to set them a movement speed that is the same as our ground movement. So we will give the oranges the bullet behavior, just the same as the grass has. And we'll turn off set angle again, add event orange on creation, and we will go ahead and set the angle of motion to 180, the same as we did with the grass, and that's to make it go to the left. And then since we didn't change the ground's speed here from 400, that will match the oranges. Our first orange that started on the map scrolled away, and there's one of our new ones. Here's a slightly lower one, so we can see that they're coming at different heights. Can't reach those yet, but that's fine, we'll get there. So now we have a very boring game, but a working game. And we can hop in here, and we're going to work with the other options. So the next one is going to be creating 5 oranges, and we want them all at random spots. So we're going to work with this here, and we're going to add repeat. And that's just going to do the same thing the amount of times we put in here. So count of 5 means it's going to repeat whatever this action is 5 times. So we can throw this down here, and that's going to spawn oranges 5 times at a random Y coordinate at 900. Now if we spawn them all at 900 and they spawn at the same Y coordinate or close to, they're going to be overlapping. We want to give them a little gap between. But if we change this to say 925, then it's going to set all of them. So we need a variable in here in order to set this X coordinate slightly further back each time in here. And we'll do that by adding a local variable. So we'll go ahead and right click one of the ones inside of this whole thing here. Right click, add local variable, and we'll call it space gap. And I'm just going to drag it up here. That way it can be used on all 3 of these. And space gap is 0. We're going to add to space gap in here. Space gap 25. And then we are going to set this X coordinate to 900 plus space gap. So that means it's going to start at 900 plus 0, which is 900, so no change for the first one. Then it's going to add 25 to space gap. And then it's going to repeat this process. Come back into here, 900 plus 25, so 925 now. Add 25 more, and it will repeat this 5 times. Additionally, it's also going to create this one. So there'll be 2 on the 900 gap right now, but we'll work with that in a second. And we're just going to verify it worked. We want to see 6. Yeah, and here's the 2 on the same gap. And each time the first one's going to be on the same exact spot. And then the last one, we want the same exact thing to happen, but with a much larger amount. So I'm going to copy paste this and delete this last empty one. And I'm just going to change this to 30. So now it's going to spawn 36 of them. Boop. But it is working. We see that they're hitting all these and spawning them, and there's a nice little gap between them. So now we just have to make a way to decide which one of these gets called. So I'm going to add one more blank sub event, and I want this to happen before any of these conditions get checked. And then I need one more local variable. So I'm going to Control C, Control V, and just rename this one to random oranges, because I want a random amount of oranges to be done by one of these. And this spot we're going to set random oranges to either 1, 2, or 3, and only play the one of those that I select. So we will set value underneath system, set value, random oranges, and again we're going to use random and 3, and this is going to give us between 0 and up to but not including 3. And then I'm going to close that into an int, which is going to give me an integer of between 0 and not 3, which means it'll give us 0, 1, or 2. But I said I wanted 1, 2, or 3, so I'm just going to add 1. So that'll give us 1, 2, or 3. And that's going to happen before these, so now I can do a check here. System compare variable, random orange. If it's equal to 1, we'll do the first one. If it's equal to 2, we'll do the second one. And if it's equal to 3, we'll do the third one. And we'll go ahead and run it again, see if it's working. We have 5 here, so that's good. That's one of them. We have 1 here, and now we just need to hit the 30. We got 5 again. It's random, so it might take a minute to hit it. Oh, there it is, and there's the 30. So we get all the oranges there. So this is working. I'm going to close this because it takes up a lot of space. And we will add some nice text here. So we're going to double click anywhere. Text, general text again. Click on the screen, and again we get this gross text. We're going to make it nice and large. Oh, 72 maybe. And then, as you can see, there's only a little bit showing. We need to drag this to actually show the text. And I want this to spawn in the center of where I started this. And we're going to change this Arial font into something a little funner. So we're going to keep the fantasy theme going there. And we're going to change this to the word start. I still want this a little bigger. Let's go 128. And we're going to make this red, bright red. So now we have this cool little start menu. I'm going to recenter that. And since I have this starting in the center of the text position, if I just cover the whole map, it'll center it for me. But I do want this to go away. I don't want it to sit there forever and say start. But I'm going to reuse it later, so I'm not going to delete it. And I'm going to do this with a behavior of fade. And here we see fade out time, so it's going to, over 1 second, fade out. But we are going to uncheck this destroy box. That way it doesn't destroy it when it fades out. It just goes invisible and sits there. So essentially the word start is still sitting here, just invisible to us. And now, if we collect every one of the oranges in one of our sets of oranges, so if I collect all of these, we want it to say the word perfect because you got them all. So I'll have to do a check to find out how many oranges there are, and then another check to see how many I collect. So we're going to come back into the random spawning of oranges because this is the only spot that's going to tell me how many oranges I have. Add an event. Actually, add a global. And this one will be called required oranges. And we're just going to set that to 1 to start. And then let's copy paste this. And we'll name it collected oranges. And this one will be 0. And again, these are just starting values. We just want to make sure they're not even to start. And then inside here, every 3 seconds, we're going to reset our collected down to 0. So set value in here of collected oranges to 0. And then every time I collect an orange, I'm going to add 1 to our collected oranges. So add 2 collected oranges 1. So essentially, every 3 seconds, we will get a grouping of oranges. It'll set how many I've collected to 0. And then as I collect them, I will gain 1 collection point per orange I collect. And then in here, if this one happens, the required oranges will be 1. So system set value required oranges to 1. And we're going to copy this. And then if this one happens, instead of 1, it's going to be 5. So required oranges is 5. And then if this one happens, required oranges will be 30. So now we set a requirement and the amount of collected oranges we have each time. And we just need an event for if collected is equal to required. So we'll do that with system compare to values. Collected oranges is equal to required oranges. And then we're going to take that text that says start and we're going to set it to a new word, which is perfect. So we'll set text here. Change it to perfect, and then we want to restart the fade out condition. So restart fade, and I'll just have it come back in and slowly fade out again, so we get the word perfect if we collect all of the oranges. Which, that one shouldn't have worked, so we'll have to figure out why it did. Can't reach that. Let's go ahead and figure out how to get that double jump in here. It is a built-in to save you from all the debugging I had to go through. Essentially, I bumped into two problems here. One of the problems was the next group would spawn before my first one got all the way out of the way. This only happened after the 30 oranges spawned. Since I pushed them so far to the right, they would be on screen for more than the 3 seconds. I fixed this by setting the every 3 seconds up to every 4 seconds, as well as the space gap from 25 pixels down to 15 pixels. The second issue was while the oranges were playing their collected animation, they could still be re-collided with, so I would essentially bump into the same item multiple times, and we will fast forward to that point, and I will show you how we worked out that bug and how we finished up the game. So we're going to add an extra barrier here, and it'll be on collision with orange, and that orange is not playing collected. So we're going to do is playing animation collected, and then we're going to right click this and invert it, and that's going to stop it from recollecting the same ones. That did not work as expected. We're just going to set it to 4-second gaps. And that should fix everything for us. And the only time the issue happens is on the 31, so we will wait for that and catch those as late as possible. And even with catching them as late as possible, we didn't get any issues with the perfects. So giving it that extra second seems to be working. Needed to collect all 5, perfect. Need to collect 1, perfect. Alright, there you have it. Your very first game. From here, you can continue to modify it and make it more unique to you. If you have any questions, just throw them down below. I'll do my best to help you out. Otherwise, have a good one.